What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. This is Hawk Talk on Melrose. We are recording this on Wednesday, December 27th. I am Collin, joined by always Tyler Schrader, who is in Waterloo. It looks like you got some Christmas gifts. The background, the LED light. I love that, by the way. And then your new Kinnick sweatshirt. You had to come out with the first episode. I love it. How was your Christmas? I haven't really talked to you since I think
Well,
Saturday was the last time we
yeah,
talked.
yeah. You stopped over. We went back to our hometowns obviously for Christmas, and you stopped over, had a few beers, and it's been good, man. Yeah, I got a few Christmas gifts. I got a new LED Iowa sign. I'm still trying to tweak it a little bit for you guys so you can see it a little bit better. So maybe next time when a new episode comes out, maybe hopefully it looks a little better than it is. But changing the setup a little bit, it looks good. But yeah, man, had a good Christmas. Got it flew by though, man. It's like for me, I only had that Monday off for Christmas. So I had the weekend and then Monday. But it's weird because it's already like, well, we're recording Wednesday night and now it's
Yep.
so tomorrow when this comes out, it's already Thursday. It's like time is flying by, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this weekend. With last weekend being out, well, I like 2 weeks ago for me, I was in New York. Then last weekend I was, in Iowa. This weekend I'm just so looking forward to not doing much and watching football,
Yeah.
and obviously having Monday off and having a 3-day weekend. Like I'm really excited for that. So, but yeah, let's get right into it. We're gonna first talk a little bit about the guys coming back. We heard last night a really big name, Hawk, Hawk, Hawk. So excited. He is back. Jay Higgins, baby. And then we'll get into the Iowa Tennessee game towards the end of the game or end of the podcast. And we'll give our prediction of the game. But yeah, let's get right into this offseason so far for Iowa. And I know it's not really the offseason quite yet because we still have one
Yeah.
more game, but I kind of consider it the offseason at this point. And, we said on the last episode, man, like Iowa has been very quiet in the portal, which in a sense, like I'm totally okay with it because when you really think about it, some of the guys that they are trying to get back are guys that, in my opinion, you're not going to find anybody better in the portal. I mean, Jay Higgins, Sebastian Castro, Cooper DeJean, who are you going to find better than those players? And so for Iowa, their main goal right now is, hey, let's get these players back. We'll see then what happens after that because you still have another transfer window at the end of spring ball. Like last year, we got Caleb Brown. So I think that's where Iowa's position is. And I'm totally for that because at the end of the day, I'd rather get Jay Higgins than see Jay Higgins go to the NFL and we have to go out and get an unproven. Now, yeah, said person might have been good at their school, but you never know how they're going to translate to Iowa and translate to the Big Ten. So I love that we're doing this. And like I said, my goal, my hope is that we can hopefully bring back, and I'm going to go through the list here soon of some of the players. Like if we could bring back 50 to 60% of those players, that's huge. But yeah, let's first start with Jay Higgins, man. Like I know we were texting last night. Just I don't think people quite realize how big of a situation that is that he is coming back. I mean, you talk about a guy that is so good. I mean, led the nation in tackles, should have been the linebacker of the year in the Big Ten, should have been the nation's best linebacker. It's huge. And I'm just so pumped about that.
When I think on one of the previous episodes, we were talking about how we were, gonna wait to do a podcast, wait to see some of maybe the guys announce if they're coming back or
Yeah.
not. And and you had mentioned, Colin, you're like, obviously Cooper DeJean's the the one guy that obviously everyone's going to talk about, but really like what we need, because you were afraid like if our linebackers leave, that is a position of great
Yeah.
need for Iowa come next year. And you're like, if we can somehow get Nick Jackson to stay, get that waiver, get Jay Higgins somehow to stay, then you probably are talking to the best linebacker duo in the country. And, we're waiting on Nick Jackson's decision. But we'll get into him as well with the waiver. But Jay Higgins staying, man, is maybe one of the biggest things that could have happened for Iowa.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were excited last night, and I think most people realize how big it is, but I don't think some people quite understand how huge of a deal of a guy in in Jay Higgins caliber that is coming back on this team. And then
Yeah.
you mentioned it, and I kind of forgot to even say that at the beginning, was before Jay Higgins' announcement, we did hear about Nick Jackson and the waiver process. Now, he has yet to make the decision, but in my opinion, the way I look at it is, okay, now Jay Higgins is coming back, and I know they're like really good friends. I don't see a situation where
I'm feeling good.
Jackson, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it too. Plus, the way I look at it is, why would you try to even seek a waiver if you weren't even wanting to come back, in my opinion, right? So, like, that's where I feel like Nick Jackson is going to come back for one more year. My only thing about him that maybe he would maybe go off is he has been in college for a while now. I'm pretty sure he's now been in college for 6 years, I believe. I mean, I think he's probably 24, 25. And at some point, maybe he's ready just to move on. I mean, you're not going to be young forever. And, obviously NFL probably awaits him. So maybe that is kind of playing in the back of his mind. But I just think now with Jay Higgins coming back, I just think, and now your waiver has been approved. I don't know. I just don't see a situation where he doesn't come back. I would say 85% chance Nick Jackson comes back. And like you said, going to be one of the best linebacker duos in the country come next year. Coached by one of the best linebackers coach in the country.
Yeah, man. I'm so excited and kind of like you just mentioned, it's like what David Eichel had tweeted. He tweeted the domino effect, right? Like what is this Jay Higgins return going to mean for the rest of the guys? And I really wonder, are they going to kind of get the band all back together and do it for another year? I'm praying that it happens because, like you said, I'd rather keep these known commodities that we know what we have with these guys on defense rather than have to seek these guys out in the portal and then, do they fit the system? Are they ready? How do they adjust to, maybe a new Big Ten?
Yep.
Especially next year in the new Big Ten. So, this is one of a few guys. Obviously, you have yet to decide what they want to do, but man, it's a great start for sure.
I think Iowa, when you look at like how Iowa recruits high school, I mean, they don't just go out and just find random guys. They find guys that fit. So I think for Iowa, whenever they go on the transfer portal, you're going to find, like, they're going to get guys that are probably going to do good at Iowa because they find guys that fit the program. But you just never know, though. I mean, like, for example, kind of like, here's like one, like Seth Anderson, right? Like, now, yes, I think we underutilized him, but I don't think he's quite as maybe good as what, like, his stats were at, where was he at? Charleston Southern, right? Like, sometimes sometimes it doesn't translate. Now, hopefully Seth Anderson can get better and hopefully we start utilizing him more because I do think he has the potential, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes it just, I mean, we thought that for the first 8 weeks with Caleb Brown, we were like, what's going on here? Right. And we finally obviously got him going, but yeah, so I'm going to go through kind of the players that could come back. And then I just want to hear your opinion on this. I'm going to rank like my desire and I want to hear what your thoughts on my ranking of like, one being like, I want this guy back the most to like number 9 or 10 being like, I'm not really. So on the offensive side, we have Luke Lachey, Eric All, Nick DeJong, who is staying now, which I don't really have I'm not really, he wasn't, I mean, it's just another body, I should say, a guy with experience. And then Dejon Parker, who was that transfer that never really panned out. Now he was hurt most of the year. And then defensively, Nick Jackson, Kyle Fisher, Jay Higgins, which we now know, Jamari Harris, Cooper Jean, Sebastian Castro, and Quinn Schulte. So you got 9 players now. Now, when I made this list, it was actually 10 because this was on Monday, actually. On Christmas, when I was just at night, I was kind of bored just watching the 49ers game. I made this list up. And obviously at that time, Jay Higgins had yet to make his decision. So 9 players now. And my goal, like I said, is 50 to 60%, which would be about anywhere from 4 to 6 players coming back. So my ranking is this. Obviously, number 1, Cooper Jean. I think I would think that you would probably put him at number 1 as well. And I know you texted me last night, and I think you're maybe a little bit more, what's the word?
I'm
more optimistic. Yeah.
More optimistic, more hopeful, I guess.
I just, the thing with me is, I'm not going to say who, I know somebody that knows his family and just some of the stuff. Now that they have not said yes or no that he is going to the NFL or staying, but just some of the stuff that they have said. And I was talking to this person over the weekend, and just some of the stuff that they say just makes me think like it's too good to be true. I just think he's going to move on, which if he wasn't going to be a first round draft pick, I would say, yeah, come back. But it's like he is going to minimum make $12 million because that is what like the minimum player. And that's if you get picked like 31st or 32nd or whatever. Yeah. He's probably going to be picked like middle of the first round, maybe like 20 to 25. That's like close to $20 million guaranteed. So I don't blame him if he wants to go, but it would be pretty cool. I would love to do Coop a couple more times, or like 12 more times come next year, or 100 more times, because throughout a game, he makes so many plays that you do say that like numerous times a game, times 12 games, or hopefully next year times 15 or 16 games. Number 2 then for me, I actually had, now I have Jay Higgins at number 3. Now he's coming back. So what, it is what it is. Number 2 for me was Luke Lachey, because when you really think about our team, what do we need? Is we need offensive weapons. Right now we don't know who the next OC is going to be. Hopefully it's Paul Chris. But if he does come, you want all the talent on the offense side as possible. And Luke Lachey, dude, like the dude's going to be like the next Sam Laporta, the next TJ Hawkinson in the NFL. Has so much potential. And if you told me right now that he's coming back, like that's huge. Now he is coming off an injury, but the dude has so much potential. And I just got to put him a slightly ahead of Jay Higgins just because of that reason. Because, defensively, we have a bunch of playmakers now at the linebacker position. If Jay Higgins did leave, there'd be some question marks. But on the offensive side of the ball, there's way more question marks on that side, where it's like, I got to put Luke Lachey ahead of Jay Higgins.
Yeah, and if Cooper wasn't just one of the best Iowa players I've ever seen, I think maybe I'd rank him number 1 for just those reasons that you said, right? He's the top offensive weapon potentially coming back for Iowa if he were to decide to come back. And I mean, Iowa, obviously, as many fans know, we need kind of all the help that we can give Cade McNamara, who's, coming off his own injury. So, no doubt about it. I think I don't disagree with that at all.
And then number 3, Jay Higgins. And then number 4, I have Sebastian Castro. This that do-it-all player, makes plays. You don't really think about him. You go into a game, you kind of forget about him, and then he just makes those couple plays a game where you're like, oh my God, this dude is such a stud. So I have him at number 4. I think it would be huge if he could come back. He plays that cash position where he's kind of, like I say, just all over the field. It just seems like every play he is just there. And just be big.
I don't know what were you going to say? Well, I was just going to say, did it seem like he just got better as the year went on?
Yeah.
Like he really came on late. Like the last, it seems like maybe 4 or 5 games, he was like maybe one of the best defensive players out there.
And I remember like last year, like he got better as the year went on. And then, like this year, it's like he has like, he started off pretty good, but like you said, like as the year went on, it's like, it's just,
and he kind of became a household name. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have him at number 4, and then Nick Jackson at number 5, just because you talk about, outside of Jay Higgins, we're very thin at the linebacker position. Now we have a lot of potential. We got some guys coming in, but bringing back Nick Jackson for one more year. I mean, we saw him. I remember the first game, everybody was on him because he didn't have that good of a game against Utah State. And it's just like, hold your breath. I think he's going to be just fine. And you kind of saw as the year went on, like he wasn't a huge playmaker. Like he wasn't a guy that like stood out in the stats and stuff, but he did everything right. And he's just that smart, sound football player for us, guy with a lot of experience. And I know the coaches love him. He loves playing at Iowa. He's so glad he came here. Like he's just that typical player for us that I'm just very happy that we have him. And it would be huge if he came back. You have 2 guys. We were just talked about it. The 2-headed monster of him and Higgins. So I have him at number 5. Number 6 for me, Jamari Harris. I know me and you, we got a little annoyed with him at times this year. I don't think he was quite as good as what we maybe hoped for, but he's still a decent football player. And especially if Cooper Jean leaves, like we need that guy. Like we need that experience. And so I have him at number 6. And then number 7, I have Eric All. I don't think he's coming back at all. I think he is the one guy. If I had to put any of these guys that are, I would put him. I would put Cooper Jean above him, slightly ahead of him in terms of percentages of coming back. I just don't see where he's going to come back. But I have him at number 7 because once again, we talk about just needing offensive weapons. He still would be a big offensive weapon for Cade. Number 8, Quinn Schulte. I texted you that this morning. He's one guy for me. Like, be great if he came back. I mean, he's experienced, but like, I'm really excited for Cohen Entringer and what he can do. And I just think at some point, Cohen's not going to be here forever. And it's like, you got to get him out there. And like, if Quinn Schulte comes back, and let's say Sebastian Castro comes back, where do you put Cohen? Then that's where I'm a little afraid of. Now, if Castro leaves, you could probably put Cohen in the catch position, but I don't know. I'm like 50-50 on Quinn. It'd be great if he came back. I mean, he's a pretty good player. There's times where he's all right, but I mean, for the most part, he does everything right. I mean, he's kind of like Nick Jackson, just a sound football player. So I put him at number 8. And then we don't even need to talk about the last 2, Kyle Fisher, who could technically come back. He's that other linebacker. And then Dejon Parker, who was that offensive lineman. So, like I said, we don't need to talk about them. But yeah, for me, it's mainly let's make sure we keep Lachey on the offensive side of the ball. And let's keep some defensive players like Cooper Jean, Castro, Nick Jackson. So,
100% agree with you there. I think too, like you were talking about Cohen Entringer. I mean, I just think he, like, and you'd mentioned it, he's got like all the tools, all the physical traits to be like a stud, whether it's like a safety or cash or whatever you want to call it. I mean, you saw him against Michigan chase the guy down, right? On the punt return. I mean, he saved a punt return for a touchdown.
Yeah.
So the guy's athletic. It's almost like you said, he's almost too good not to have it out on the field. And you wonder if he doesn't get his opportunity, what does he do, too. So
I remember it came down. He's from Michigan. It came down to Iowa, Wisconsin. I remember at the time.
How old is he?
Class of 2022. So
okay,
he would have been a freshman So I think he's going to be, and he obviously redshirted probably 1 year. So he's probably going to be like a sophomore next year.
Yeah.
But I know it was down to Iowa, Wisconsin. And at the time I really thought he was going to go to Wisconsin. But he decided to come to Iowa, which, I just think he's too good not to play out in the field. Especially come next year. I mean, you talk about another off season and everything like that. So
the same thing could be said about Nick Jackson. I mean, imagine him and another 1 year already in the system. And like we talked about, didn't really make any flashy plays or, got better as the year went on. Imagine him, fresh in his second year,
exactly.
Iowa. I mean, I think he would be an instant stud. So a lot of guys, like you said, I'm hoping and praying we can get back and not have to worry about maybe trying to go out and find in the transfer portal.
I'm glad you brought that up because I remember Nick Jackson. I remember seeing something because he didn't come. He had to graduate Virginia, so he didn't come for spring ball. He came in the summer, and I remember reading an article where Phil's defense is actually kind of hard to learn. It takes some time, and so like he had to learn the new defense. He had to learn the ways of how to do things for Iowa, and probably as the year, and that's where you probably saw Nick Jackson as the year went on. You talk about Castro just improving as the year went on. He was kind of the same way. I mean, Utah State game didn't look very good out there as the year went on. He slowly but surely was a really good football player for us. So yeah, if he comes back, it's just another year in the system, which is huge.
And then an entire offseason, like you said. So yeah.
Yep. So for me, it's like, okay, if you bring back 50% of these players or 60%, I'm hoping 60%. You bring back 5 or 6 of these 9 or 10 players. Then at that point, like I said, I still want to dive a little bit into the transfer portal. Now, if you can bring back that amount or hopefully maybe even more than that, you don't really need many players in the transfer portal. I still want at least another wide receiver. I would take another X position wide receiver. I know we've been saying that, a guy that's 6'2", 6'3", that can stretch the field, maybe even 6'4", stretch the field. I would like that. So I would love to still go out and find that wide receiver. Maybe another offensive lineman. I know we're going to lose Rusty Feth. We're bringing back pretty much everybody else, but maybe if there is an opportunity to find that offensive lineman, and then probably another corner. because once again, if Cooper doesn't come back, I like our corners. Like I like Jamari Harris and can't even think of his name right now. The other guy.
Sean Lee.
Yep, Deshaun Lee. But you once again, you see injuries, you see times where you want to play nickel, you got to bring another corner out there. You want that third guy, and so maybe another corner as well. So and forgot to even mention we found our punter, a
Yeah.
quote unquote 5-star punter from Australia, the same place that Tory Taylor came from. I don't know if did you watch the video that they put out? Like they put like a highlight video or something out, and his punts were like. Now, granted, it's not a game setting, but
Like the hang time and
the
everything.
hang time was unbelievable. I'm like, oh my god, this guy's gonna
Right.
be maybe not as good as Tory right away, but like at least we found somebody because once again for Iowa now, hopefully,
Well,
knock on wood, we don't
right.
have to rely on our punter as much moving forward with the new offense coordinator. But you never know. I mean, till
But
I see it, right?
yeah, and yeah, I mean, there's just going to be games where yeah, it's going to be a defensive battle, and there's going to be games where our offense blows and it can't get anything going. The value that a punter has to a team, I mean, us Iowa fans, we know it, right? We
Yep.
almost take it for granted, and it's like we haven't seen what punting has been like without a guy like Tory Taylor in a long time. So to get a guy like that, I can't even really remember how to pronounce his name or whatever, but he looks like a stud. Obviously, it's wait and see, but I mean, to get a guy from the same sort of place where Tory came from is a really promising sign, that's for sure.
And then last but not least, before we get into the Tennessee game, Iowa Tennessee game, am I the only one that thinks like Iowa should also maybe go out and find like a transfer quarterback to be a backup to Cade? Because
Oh,
in my opinion, Cade is so injury prone. And your backup Deacon Hill, he ain't. I mean, we've seen it. It ain't gonna work now. And I mean, yeah, we have Marco Lyons, or I don't know how you pronounce
mhm.
Lions or Lyons. And I think he's going to be a good quarterback, but he's only a freshman. He doesn't have any game experience. So if Cade gets hurt, like, what do you do? I wouldn't mind going out and finding a decent backup quarterback. Now, you're not going to find a good backup, or you're not going to find a good quarterback because they're not going to come to Iowa when they know they're probably not going to start, right? But like,
Yeah,
can you go out and find like a decent backup, right?
yeah,
Um, Kind of like a player like, and I don't want this guy, but it's almost kind of like a player like Nebraska, Chuba Purdy's leaving. And obviously he's not very good. But once again, you're not going to find a very good quarterback. You can find like maybe like an
yeah.
average quarterback, someone that is better than Deacon Hill. Because I was talking to a person today that forgot that Cade's coming back, and he was like asking me about like Deacon Hill. I'm like, no, Deacon is not starting next year. Well, and I was like, well, hopefully not. Well, it all depends on Cade's health, and just I just don't know if I can endure another season of Deacon Hill. And so like I don't know. I feel like Iowa should also look at, but they're not going to. I already know they're
No,
not, but I just think they should.
they should, and we talked about it on the last episode, the value of having a backup quarterback in
Yeah.
today's day and age. I mean, it's so important whether it's at the NFL level or college level. I mean, you kind of hit it on the head. Even a guy like, like you said, Chuba Purdy might be a good example. It's a guy that like has game experience, but obviously wasn't good enough to start. It's someone that could fill a need
If you need it.
if you needed it. A guy that can
Yep.
manage a game, a guy that can manage a game or two or three if you had to. You know what I
Get a
mean?
guy that
So
can actually maybe run a little bit too, instead of like someone that is like 280 pounds.
I can't wait for what is his name? James Rassar, whatever his name is.
I am too. I mean, I'm excited
Like,
for his running. Now, his accuracy I was reading is not great. He like threw like 54%, but like you can always improve on that. But I love that
right.
he can actually run the football.
Yeah.
He's a legit dual
Well, he's
threat quarterback.
like 6'4", 6'5", and he runs like 100-meter dash in like 10 seconds. So
Yeah.
he's athletic enough to, when the pocket breaks down, to make a play.
Yep. I'm excited for him as well.
Feel like we've been missing that for the longest time at Iowa, but I know
I,
that's not how we really do it.
I
But
I'm honestly excited for Marco as well. I just once again he's now
yeah,
he's gonna be a sophomore come next year, but it's just like a guy that has no game experience. That's the only thing I'm a little nervous about. But I just wish this year, man, like there were so many times where Deacon was so bad, and it's like,
I
dude, bring
know.
in Marco. We have nothing to lose. He's your future. Like honestly, like he could be your future. Bring him
Yeah.
out there. I
How
don't
old
get
is
it.
Deacon Hill? Like what year
I
is
think
he?
he
I
still
don't
has a
even
couple
know.
more years left. Dude, I would not mind him just transferring. It would free up a scholarship spot. And I mean, he's not a D1 quarterback. He was going to go off to Fordham or whatever the
Yep.
freaking school
Fordham.
was. Like,
Yep.
he's not a D1 quarterback, and I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, this Monday is the last Monday or the last game, I should say, that we ever see him start
I
a football game for us.
hope so too. That's
But
for sure.
let's get into the game though here real
Yeah.
quick. We won't spend much time on it. Obviously, Tennessee now out
Yeah.
with a lot of players. I actually looked up an article because I knew they had a lot of players, but they have 10 transfers that aren't playing. They have 3 opt-outs, including the one today, Joe Milton, which I'm glad we've waited to do the podcast
Quarterback.
until today.
Yep.
Quarterback
Big
for
news.
them. Their stud running back, Jalen Wright, who had over 1,000 yards, he opted out. They're both going to the opting out for the NFL.
Yeah.
They have another running back that's opting out as well. And then they have 5 injuries so far. So like you're talking 18 players not playing for them. Now, not all of these players were starters,
Right.
but that's a lot of players. And it goes for me. My first initial reaction to all that is like, it's like bowl games are just like I'm so excited for the game. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm excited to watch Iowa play Tennessee. Like hopefully we win, but it's just like God. Bowl games now are just such a joke because once again, if Iowa, let's say, does win, well, it's kind of like when we beat Kentucky last year, and it's just like, oh well, they were Will Levis didn't play, and they were without a lot of defensive players, and I don't know. It's just like, can we just play like what it used to be where everybody played? It just sucks. It really does. It's like if you don't make the playoffs or a New Year's Six, well, even the New Year's Six Bowl, I saw Florida State and Georgia have so many opt outs, and it's just like I don't know. I have a solution to it, but we could talk about it after we talk about this game. But it really annoys me.
Well, and I was just gonna say, and I think a lot of it has to do with the 14 playoff right now. With so many limited spots, Collin, there's only 4 teams that make it right now. Obviously, that'll change come next year, but for the last how many years, that's why I think these bowl games have meant less and less to some of these guys because, well, if you're not in the playoffs, well, then you have no shot. And they almost see it as like, well, what's the point? I'm only risking injury, especially for a lot of these guys that are wanting to go off to the NFL or, like you said, transfer to a new team or whatever. But I agree. I remember there was a time where I was so excited for bowl season, right? And now it's almost like yeah, I'm excited for the game, but if we win or we lose, it's almost like, well, does it really matter? Like I don't know. I hate saying that because obviously you want to win your bowl game. You want to end the year off right. I mean, that'd be the 11th win for Iowa, which would be huge.
Which would be be big.
Which would be huge. But it just doesn't have that same feel to it. That's for sure.
And it sucks because this is actually a pretty good bowl game. It's one of the best non New Year's Six Bowl. It actually probably is the best non New Year's Six Bowl. I mean, talk about a good Big Ten team, a good SEC team facing off on ABC. The game before the playoffs, like it's a great bowl game. It's not like when I sent you a snap yesterday of Minnesota versus Bowling Green at 1:30 on a Tuesday afternoon.
I didn't even know the game was on.
Yeah,
dude.
And like you said, you could probably see the back. There's bowl games on right now. I mean, there was a bowl game on at 1:30 today.
Right.
So yeah, when you talk about the Citrus Bowl, it's a great bowl game, and it just sucks that it gets with all these opt outs and stuff. So with Joe Milton not playing, here comes a freshman quarterback. I don't even want to pronounce his last name because I don't even know. Nico Ima Lavia. I don't freaking know. But anyways, he is a freshman. He has played in 4 games this year, all, when Tennessee was up, and he's completed 61.5% of his passes. He's 16 of 26 for 163 yards and 1 touchdown. So he's played a little bit this year. It's not like he hasn't played at all, but he hasn't started a game yet. And his first career start is against a very good, well-coached by the GOAT defense in Iowa. And then once again, you're without your leading running back. I think it's going to be tough for them. Now, like you said today, which I laughed at your tweet back to me, which is so true. Is he good enough to get to like 13 points? And it's like that fair point, because that's all it need take for them to if they get to that, they probably will win considering how bad our offense is. But I think they're going to struggle on offense. Just with that being said, I, I don't see how this Tennessee offense with the freshman quarterback and all these opt outs are going to be able to go up and down the field against Iowa when we just saw Iowa play Michigan, who is clearly a better offensive team, given they were actually fully loaded, and we held them to the lowest yard per play in the Jim Harbaugh era, and we have no opt outs. We have everybody playing. So, yeah, I mean, another low scoring affair, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't want to. I mean, this will probably backfire me saying this now, but it's almost like it we, like you said, we don't have near the amount of opt-outs, at least the kind of big name players that Tennessee does. So is it almost that we're taking it more seriously? Are we wanting it more? I mean, on paper right now, I think we are, but I don't know.
Well, I'm a pause you for just. I think it speaks the culture of Iowa football. Yeah. Because I really think that, you look at all these other
every
teams,
game matters,
opt-outs. It just shows what Kirk has kind of built in Iowa City. And the reason why we've been so consistently good, because at the end of the day, to be a successful college football program, for the most part, you got to have a good culture. I mean, you look at teams like Texas A&M, Florida, Florida State for the longest time. Now they've gotten that new coach that's built. You got to have a good culture to be good. I mean, look at Nebraska under Scott Frost. Now look at them now with Matt Rule. He's changing the culture. So with Iowa, they just have such a great culture, such good leadership, and it kind of shows.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's an excellent point, Collin. You're right. Everyone's bought in, and that's all Kirk Ferentz right there. So that's literally the answer to that question. But I don't know. It's weird because it's like I joke to you. I'm like, this guy's going to come in and score 13 points, and that's going to be enough to win the game. The over-under is 36.5. Tennessee's is still a 6.5-point favorite. Yep. Even after the Joe Milton opt-out, that's just obviously the lack of respect for Iowa's offense in a game like this. I don't know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts first before I give my prediction, because I'm not even for sure what I want to do yet, to be honest with you.
I think it shows a little bit, with the line change only being like a point and a half. Yeah, I think it just shows that, like, I think Vegas thinks, Joe Milton's really, which he's really not. I mean, he's a good quarterback, but
he's talented, but he's talented, but I think he lacks, I don't know, something.
And I think this freshman, who obviously was like the number one recruiter, the number one quarterback this last year. It's not much of a drop off is kind of what I'm seeing now. Yeah, like you said, with Iowa's offense, does it really matter? But I thought I was envisioning, because I was actually looking at the number this morning. This was before Joe Milton, and I saw I think it was like 7.5 or 8. And I didn't look at it until you told me. I thought it would have dropped down more than that. I was actually kind of surprised by that. But no, for me, I just think it's going to be, like I said, a low scoring affair. I think both teams are going to struggle offensively, because you have a Tennessee offense that is new quarterback going up against a really solid defense. And then you got Iowa's offense, who's bad, going up against a Tennessee defense that is not going to be that great, because they have a lot of opt-outs on the defense side of the ball as well. But once again, Iowa's offense is so bad that it really doesn't matter. But the day after Michigan, when we got the news that we're playing Tennessee, I was like, I don't see us winning. I don't see us being an SEC team, given how bad our offense is. But ever since all these opt-outs with Tennessee, and then, just talking about, the culture of Iowa, and how, none of the players besides a couple of that have transferred or opting out speaks volume. I just think Iowa's bought in to this bowl game. And I think Tennessee, honestly, is probably not. And I think this is the problem for a lot of teams come the bowl game, especially I feel like in the SEC, where you see all these teams that just, they opt out because they could they care less. And when that happens, I just feel like you have a team that's more motivated. I mean, you go back to when Iowa played Mississippi State in the Outback Bowl 2018, 2019. Like, I guarantee you Mississippi State was probably like not wanting to be there. But for Iowa, like, they take every advantage for any game. And it was the reason why we came out on top, even though Mississippi State that year
Oh my God.
They had like 2 defensive linemen that now play in the NFL. Like that team was very talented, and we still beat them. So I think that with all that being said, I think Iowa does find a way to win, but it's going to be once again very low scoring. I'm going to go 16-10. Iowa wins, obviously covers, and then it goes under. So that's my prediction.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go Iowa 17-14. I think you're right. I think Iowa's just more motivated to play in the game just by the opt-outs alone. I mean, you
Yep.
see that, and I give the edge to Iowa there. I think you're right. I think it's going to be a very, very low scoring affair. But I'm going to say Iowa somehow gets 2 touchdowns and a field goal, and we beat Tennessee and get to 11 wins and, end the year off with a
bang.
Citrus Bowl victory. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
and hopefully either before that game or hopefully right after that game, some of these players, we even get better news, right, of some of these players coming back.
I think we'll hear a lot more in the coming weeks once we get through this game.
I was going to actually say at the end of this podcast is I feel like this is such like a hour by hour thing for some of these players. Like we could release this tomorrow morning and we might find out later tonight that someone's coming back, right? Or, it's just like last night, like the Jay Higgins thing was just way out of the blue, like just some random Tuesday night, just out of the blue.
I would have never thought he would have announced it before the game, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm glad he did, but you're right.
Hopefully nobody does, because then it's like, sweet. Like we just spent the last, 30 minutes talking about it. But before we end though, do you have anything more to say about the game?
No, obviously, like I just, it's the last game of the year. I'm super pumped for it. I know it doesn't have maybe the same feel as obviously a playoff game, but just that, like we were talking about the old bowl season where we'd get up for it. But obviously, regardless, still very excited.
Yep.
Excited to see what Iowa comes out and does.
Yeah, well,
I will just say this:
BF's last game.
We better be more freaking creative than we were against Michigan. That's all I'm going to say. And I know we played, that's an elite defense. I get that. But if we just think we're going to line up and run the ball up the middle and do this short passing game, this horizontal passing game, it ain't going to work. So I hope Brian, for this last game, coaching this team, and that's another thing too, I know we didn't really touch on is, this is Brian's last game. Hopefully he calls a great game and
because at the end of the day, like for me, like, and I'm not a big fan of Brian, but I know, like, at the end of the day, like he loves Iowa football, and like obviously his dad Kirk, and like I would like to see him go out on top, call a good game and get a win. It'd be a good kind of final
feel good story.
Yes,
it really would. It would.
And and you mentioned, that Michigan game, it was brutal. It was almost like he was like turned around to the entire fan base of Iowa and just like flipped everybody off, like a giant FU, because I was going to that game really expecting like we have nothing to lose. It's second to last game for Brian. Hell, he might actually be kind of creative, and it was like opposite of that. I remember that one stretch we had 6 or 7 straight run plays. I remember I was like, what are we doing? And it was topped off by that 3rd and like 12. We did like an end around to Caleb Brown. It's like, are we even trying to win this game right now? So yeah, hopefully he can be a little creative.
It's like 3 weeks to prepare for this team.
Yeah.
So we hopefully
get
something.
Take like 1 or 2 shots down the field. Like, can we just do that? We didn't do it once against Michigan. Like, I don't get why not. Yeah, I'm going to be very curious. And as for me, it's just awesome knowing the fact that this is Brian's last game as offense coordinator, because once again, I really feel like if Beth didn't step in, I think we'd be seeing Brian back next year, because I really think Kirk would have used the injury excuse, which in a way I will admit, valid. But it's not completely, because it's like, no, this offense was still going to be pretty bad regardless.
Yeah.
Before we end this though, I do want to bring up, I mentioned it before about the bowl games and like how could college football like do better with the bowl games. Now, once again, now that we're going to 12 teams, that's great, because that, gives at least 12 teams motivation. I just think the other bowl games, I think there needs to be like, now that players can get paid, you see all these sponsors, like the Citrus Bowl is by Cheez-It. I just feel like they need to use that money and you pay the players to come down and play. And if you opt out, you don't get paid.
Yep.
And I just think like that should be what happens. And then I think whoever wins, kind of like the NBA in-season tournament, whoever wins, like now you're not going to make as much as they made. I'm not,
Yeah.
but there's an incentive base for that. Like you win, you're going to make a little bit more. Like I just think that that is the way to do it, because else you're just going to keep seeing these opt-out stuff. But if you said, hey, you're going to get paid to go down, and then if you win, you're going to get paid a little bit more.
Yeah.
On top of, when they go, when these players like Iowa going down to the Citrus Bowl, they get a bunch of free stuff. They get a bunch of free gifts, free, clothing. They get it's almost like a week-long vacation. Like they're probably going to go to Universal Studios, SeaWorld. Like they're going to do all those things. So you get to do all that on top of getting paid. I just think that's how you do it. And you have all these big corporations that are sponsoring these bowl games. Cheez-It. I don't even know what the one in the background, which games played, Quick Lane. Like all these bowl games have big sponsors. Use that money that you're making off of that. And that's how, I just think that's how I think that is like the only solution, I feel like, because you're just going to keep saying it.
You could maybe even keep the same bowl games too. And I've thought about this. What if they did something where it's kind of like the NCAA basketball tournament where there's like an NIT? Like it's like, it's not the actual like, playoff that's going to crown a champion, but it's almost kind of like a consolation, like bracket too, or something like that. I don't know. I've always thought about that. Would that incentivize guys? Maybe not, but you could keep maybe the same bowls, but it's almost kind of like a tournament within those teams, or maybe you can only do so many of those too. I
just feel like if there's not like a pay incentive, I still feel like players and for that would be like, well, this is not the real thing. So I'm not gonna, because for that, then you're talking more games, because if you're doing like kind of like a bracket. So I don't know.
That probably wouldn't work because there's teams that don't even accept like an NIT invite, right? Like that I don't basketball, for example. So I'm sure that wouldn't work. But
there has to be something that they need to do, because it's getting to the point where it's just it's honestly
it's the playoffs or nothing,
and
like, in a sense, and that's sad.
Why not?
I love college football.
Why not put the transfer portal window like after the season, like in January?
That's the whole issue. That's
because
I watched the Joel Klatt show, and he breaks it down, dude. That's the issue. Like, what other sport has a free agency period and like quote unquote a draft during the season? Like that's all off season stuff. The calendar is all messed up. You should have the season, the playoffs, then do the transfer portal, then do the draft, then start the season. I don't know why we do it, but apparently it has something to do with and the reason why we take a month off, by the way, for like the playoffs is because of finals. Even though the FCS doesn't take a month off, they go right into it.
Yeah, they go right into
and it clearly that doesn't affect their finals. So like somebody was saying, that's such a dumb reason.
And let's be honest. I mean, these kids, these guys in college, especially for the fall semester, because you have all fall where you're playing games, stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're taking the joke classes. Like I remember at Iowa State, like some of my like the easiest classes I took, because you had to take some random classes to just get credits or whatever. I just like there'd be football players in those classes, and it's a joke. Like
exactly,
it's all you have to do is show up ever so often, take an easy test, and you get an A. Like it's
right.
And so those are what most of the players are taking in the fall semester, anyways. I'm sure they're taking the bigger, harder classes like in the spring where you don't have games and stuff like that, or in the summer. And then a lot of them are probably doing like online too, right? Like, so
I was just say, take Malik Murphy, the backup quarterback for Texas. He had to transfer. His team's in the playoffs. He's the backup quarterback. What if Quinn Ewers got hurt? He'd be playing. He had to transfer because that's when that window's open right now for him to get his best fit for the next team that he wants to play for. It's just that's not even really his fault. He just had to do it because that's the way the calendar's set up. It's stupid.
I wonder if he, if Texas wins, if he gets a ring, since he technically was with the team like most of the year. But I don't know.
Should give him one, but
they should.
Stupid
but
that he even had to make that choice, and that's what
sucks. And it's just the fact that like he doesn't even get to like witness. Like,
Yeah.
you talk about like such
Like,
a
what if this
huge
team
game.
wins? Like, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, that's
I don't know
crazy.
that. Yeah, that does
So,
suck. But
prime example of why the calendar and the whole transfer portal, the timing of it is dumb in my opinion, but that's
yeah.
another topic.
Well, and
So,
then another thing with the transfer portal, I still think that you should only be able to transfer one time and not be penalized for it. So you can play right away the next year. Because like in anything in life, jobs, whatever, you sometimes you go in and it's not the best fit. And I totally get that. So you should get one opportunity
yep,
to be like, okay, I can go to somewhere else and
right.
nothing happens. But then the second time it happens, you should have to sit out a year. You should be, because it's like, okay, you've done this now twice. Like,
Yep.
make up your mind. You're gonna have to sit out a year. And I just hate the fact that now, because I think they just put that out where it's like you don't have to sit out a year. And it's just like, no, you should have to sit out a year. Unless like maybe like a coach leaves, like a head coach. But other than that, it's like you
Yeah.
should be penalized if you keep transferring. Or like, remember like Terry Roberts last year, like he was at Iowa, he transferred to
Oh
Miami,
God.
played spring ball, then transferred to Michigan State. It's like, what are we doing?
All in the
Like,
same year. Like,
yeah. So
it's so stupid.
and honestly, dude, I was talking with someone today, like there's so many obviously transfer portal
Yeah,
players. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. And
it's not.
I just think there's a lot of guys that are in it that are like, I mean, like, for example, like look at Kyle McCord. You go from Ohio State
Yeah,
to Syracuse. Congrats. Best of
I
wishes to
know.
you. Like, it's
I
just,
know
it's
it.
like things like that. Now,
I know
yes,
it.
he's going to be a starter, but there are some players that literally are going to places that aren't even going to play. Terry Roberts. I mean, the
Yeah.
dude, like, did you hear him once? Like, I don't even know if he's
No.
still even on the Michigan State anymore.
Right.
And he probably would have been a starter this year for Iowa,
He would
or
have been. Yeah. Or right.
at
He
least the
would have
first
played a
two
lot.
years, and then he would have played a lot. And he'd been coach under the GOAT.
Yep.
But he decided to leave, and he went to Miami thinking it was going to, he was going to probably start, and he didn't. And then he went to Michigan State thinking he would, and he never did. And here we are. So,
Yep.
but, well, that will do it for this episode. We'll have one out. I was thinking probably after the game. We probably won't do one like after the game because the playoffs, but we'll probably do one like Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. And then, yeah, I mean, I think right now we're kind of on call in a way for these podcasts. I really think like if news comes out of some of these players, we'll probably do a like emergency pod. That's kind
Yeah.
of what I was thinking. I mean, we're kind of in that stage now where you got some of these guys that could announce at any given moment. And like you got a guy like Cooper DeJean, like if he's coming back, we are making a podcast like 20 minutes after that announcement
I'm
because
gonna.
it's so big.
I was gonna say I'm gonna want to hop on the mic real fast if that
Yeah.
happens.
So we'll be kind of on call, but we'll for surely have one out next week. For sure.
Yeah.
And then
sure.
I was thinking like we will probably have one out for sure in a couple weeks after the bowl, because at that point I guarantee you we'll know who the next OC is, because I think it's gonna come out like early January. So we'll have one out for then for sure. And then yeah, we'll just kind of play it by ear. But that's kind of how we'll do it. And we'll enjoy one more Iowa football game, and then
That's right.
enjoy Iowa women's basketball, because the men's team doesn't look very good. I think it's going to be mainly women's this year.
Right. And I was just gonna say last thing real quick. It's like good and bad obviously this season, but one thing is for sure, it's like, man, this season went by once again so damn fast. I mean, we're already almost in January. So I just remember when we started this thing up in the summertime, we were counting down the days to when our first official podcast was gonna, leading up to that first game of the year, and now we're at the last game. So it's crazy how fast it goes.
I actually thought about that today. I was looking at NFL coverage map for this week, and I was like, God, we're already on week 17. Like, what the hell? We only have two more regular season weeks left. And I mean, I love NFL playoffs, but it's like, man, like, God, this season went by fast. So,
yeah.
But, well,
Crazy.
that will do it for this episode. If we don't come back until after the bowl game, wish you guys all a happy new year. I'm sure I'll talk to you. Right. So I'll wish you maybe a little bit later on the week, but wish everybody a happy new year. Thank you guys for listening as always. For everybody that has listened all year, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We had a really good year, and this is the best year that we've had since we started. I feel like every year we have solely kind of gained, and we don't really do much promoting. I probably could, and we could probably drive up the numbers a little bit, but I just think that like the kind of the way we do it, slowly but surely, kind of, and
be consistent. We're definitely more consistent this year, and like you mentioned, we'll try to be more consistent throughout the off season too with different things.
Yep.
Not just that
We won't,
long layoff, like kind of
yeah,
like the
we
last 2
won't do what
years.
we did last year or the years
Yeah.
prior, where it's like we
Yeah.
end January 1st and you don't see our faces until maybe May for one time, and then it's like
Yeah.
July. Like we'll be more consistent about it. So well, that will do it for this episode. Thank you guys all for listening, and go Hawks.